So, Radhe Jai Jai Madhava Dayate. I took these kartals last time with me on mine. Father, and we'll do the Jaya Dhvani with the speaker, so we can all hear it better.
Radha Vinod Bihari Radha Madha Dali the Vishnu Vishnupad Paramahansa Gururacharya Astadara Satashri Srimad Abhay Charanaravinda Bhakti Vinanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Dali the Vishnu Vishnupad Paramahansa Gururacharya Astadara Satashri Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Gurudev Dali the Vishnu Vishnupad Astadara Satashri Srimad Srila Bhakti Pragyanate Srila Goswami Maharaj Ki Dali the Vishnu Vishnupad Astadara Satashri Srimad Srila Bhakti Rakshak Srila Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Dali the Vishnu Vishnupad Paramahansa Gururacharya Astadara Satashri Srimad Guru Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada Ki Mahabhagavad Srila Gauri Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Shakti Goswami Sajdananda Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Vaishnava Sarvabhaum Vishnu Karnatas Babaji Maharaj Ki Shri Gauri Vedanta Acharya Srila Baladev Shankar Ki Shri Rasi Acharya Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Ki Shri Narottam Shri Vaishnava Prabhupada Ki Shri Krishna Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki Shri Rupa Shri Sanatan Bhadra Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhadra Dasa Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Shri Sutnamara Shri Gaur Parsha Vrinda Ki Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Seko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Navadvip Maya Purdana Ki Ramya Devi Ki Harinam Sankirtana Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Govardhana Shama Kundara Ki Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Ramya Devi Ki Shri Purnamasi Yoga Maya Ki Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Gopishwar Mahadev Ki Jagannath Baladev Subhagadev Surasana Chakra Purushotam Tota Gopinath Ki Narasingha Bhagavan Ki Pandapravar Prahlad Maharaj Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Samanata Bhaktivinoda Ki Shantaya Gaura Premanande.
You already did it. Don't do it during kirtan. Only for the reflection. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jutaha Vadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamishcha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Yatripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vansha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyaevacha Patikanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahabhadanaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratishe Namah Nityanandam Namastubhyam Prem Ananda Pradayani Kalo Kalamashanashaya Janavapataye Namah Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindho, Dina Bandho Jagatpate, Gopesha, Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta, Namostute. Tapta Kanshana Gaurangi, Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Vrishabhanu Sute Devi, Pranamami Hari Priye. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavasya Cha. Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namah. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare. I offer my Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Ashtatara Sata Sri Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada. And then I offer the same unlimited Dandavat Pranams and Shraddha Pushpanjali unto the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Ashtatara Sata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, and Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I offer my Dandavat Pranams to the lotus feet of all of my Sri Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga. And I offer my Dandavat Pranams to all of the Vaishnavas and to all of the Vaishnavas. So, we're continuing with Ras Panchadhyay, the 5 chapters of Ras Lila, as Srila Prabhupada beautifully presented them to the whole world. And we made some progress in the first chapter, so now I'm continuing from where we left off, just mentioning a little bit about the previous point that was being made, because we know that prior to the description of the Ras Lila, Maharaj Parikshit, he asked very significant questions about Krishna and the gopis. And why did he ask them? Because he foresaw that in the future there would be persons who would completely misunderstand. So, we've already read so much of that nectar. And we read up to the point where the verses are describing that how some of the gopis were detained from going to Krishna by their husbands and were locked up by force within their rooms. And we also heard what happened to those gopis. Yes. So Maharaj Parikshit heard Shukadeva Goswami explain the situation of the gopis who assembled with Krishna in the rasa dance. When he heard that some of the gopis, simply by concentrating on Krishna as their paramour, became freed from all contamination of material birth and death, then he said, The gopis did not know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They accepted him as a beautiful boy, and they considered him to be their paramour. So how was it possible for them to get freed from the material condition just by thinking of a paramour? So one should consider here that Krishna and the ordinary living beings are qualitatively one. Isn't it? Krishna and the jivas are qualitatively one. Because we have the qualities of Krishna. The ordinary living beings, being part and parcel of Krishna, they are also Brahman. But Krishna, he is the supreme Parabrahman. Big difference. The question is, if it is possible for a devotee to get free from the material contaminated stage simply by thinking of Krishna, then why should this not be possible for others who are also thinking of someone? If one is thinking of a husband or son, or if anyone at all is thinking of another living entity, then, since all living entities are also Brahman, why are those who thus think of others not freed from the contaminated stage of material nature? Right? This is what the Mayavadis would love to convince everybody about. Think about me, you'll be liberated, because I'm God. So, this is a very intelligent question, Prabhupada says. Because there are always atheists who are imitating Krishna. In these days of Kali Yuga, there are many rascals who think themselves to be as good as Krishna, and who cheat people into believing that thinking of them is as good as thinking of Lord Krishna. Parikshit Maharaj, apprehending the future dangerous condition of blind followers, of demoniac imitators, therefore asked this question. And fortunately, it is recorded in Srimad Bhagavatam to warn innocent people that thinking of an ordinary man and thinking of Krishna are not the same. Actually, even thinking of the demigods cannot compare with thinking of Krishna. It is warned in the Vaishnava Tantra that one who puts Vishnu, Narayan, or Krishna on the same level as the demigods is called a Pashandi. That means, it means non-believer, but Prabhupada has added the extra word. A Pashandi, he's called a Pashandi, or rascal. Everyone say rascal. This is one of Prabhupada's favorite words. Say it again. Now, on hearing this question from Maharaj Parikshit, Sukadeva Goswami replied, "My dear king, your question is already answered even before this incident." Yes. So, now, I'm skipping ahead a little. So Sukadeva Goswami then reminded Parikshit Maharaj about the salvation of Shishupala. Yes. Shishupala was always envious of Krishna. And because of his envy, Krishna killed him. But since Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shishupala gained salvation simply by seeing him. I don't know if we need so much light. Not really. Because I have a lit screen. It's probably too bright for the eyes of everybody with this light bulb. And this one. Off. Oh. Oh. Okay. That's okay? Everybody? Yes. Is it better that way, or you want more light?
Can they see you?
You want what?
No. This is good.
Manjari, what did you say?
I thought this is good, but he made a good point for the camera.
Camera has enough light, yeah? Yeah, it's okay. So, Shishupal was always envious of Krishna, and because of his envy, Krishna killed him. But since Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shishupal gained salvation simply by seeing him. If an envious person can get salvation simply by concentrating his mind on Krishna, then what to speak of the gopis, who are so dear to Krishna and always think of him in love? There must be some difference between the enemies and between the friends, right? There should certainly be a difference. What do you think? Should they all get the same? Enemies get the same result when they're killed by Krishna as Krishna's dear most beloveds? What do you think? Huh? What do you think, Achyuta?
No way.
Yes, of course not. Of course not. Yes. If Krishna's enemies... No. There must be some difference between the enemies and the friends. If Krishna's enemies could get freed from material contamination and could become one with the Supreme, then certainly his dear friends like the gopis, they can achieve such freedom and much more. Now besides that, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is called Rishikesh. Say Krishna's name, Rishikesh. Everyone, Rishikesh. You know the meaning? You know the meaning? Today I'm testing a little bit here. You know the meaning? Rishikesh. Rangi. Rishikesh. Okay. Say the name Rishikesh. Rishikesh. Say it loudly.
Rishikesh.
So Rishika and Isha. There's two words. Rishika and Isha. So what does Isha mean? Master, Lord, controller. Isha. And Rishika means what? Senses. Does every living being have senses? Does every species of life have senses? They can see, they can taste, they can hear. They all have senses. You know why they all have senses? Because they're Atma. The Atma has senses. But in the embodied condition, as living entities are embodied, okay, so Krishna is also in their heart as the Super Soul. And he is the master of their senses. Krishna is the controller and the master of every living entity's senses. So his name is Rishikesha. So, Krishna is called Rishikesh in the Bhagavad Gita, and Shukadeva Goswami also said that Krishna is Rishikesh, the Super Soul. So whereas an ordinary man is a conditioned soul covered by the material body, Krishna and Krishna's body are the same because he is Rishikesh. There's no difference between Krishna and Krishna's body. He's Rishikesh. So any person making a distinction between Krishna and Krishna's body is a full number one. Numero uno. Nomer adin. Full number one. Huh? What's the word again? Fool? I forgot. Huh? Glupie. Glupiet. Nomer adin. Full number one. Who is full number one? A person that thinks that Krishna and his body are different. There is no difference. For us, yes, big difference. For Krishna, no. Now, Krishna is Rishikesh, and here's another name of Krishna that is being used by Shukadeva Goswami. Adhokshaja. That's a powerful name. Very powerful name. Everyone say, Adhokshaja. Adhokshaja. So Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj explained. What is the meaning of Adha and Kshaja? Adha means downward. And Kshaja means who makes everyone go downward. Did you know that? That's the meaning of Adhokshaja. That means that he's above everyone. Everyone is below him. He's transcendental Adhokshaja. And his realm in the spiritual world is called the Adhokshaja realm. And therefore you can't approach that realm with your material, mundane mind and senses. Because Krishna's Adhokshaja. So now what does he say about that? These two particular words have been used by Shukadeva Goswami in this instance, where he's talking about the difference between Shishupal's death and the gopis and so forth. So, Rishikesh is the supersoul, and Adhokshaja means the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because in English language and also in Russian language, what is it again? The Supreme Personality of Godhead. What is it in Russian language again? Yes. Duhovnaya Lichnost Boga. Verhovnaya. Yeah. Verhovnaya. So that means topmost. He's in the upper topmost position. Verhovnaya Lichnost. Lichnost means personality. And Boga, it comes from the Sanskrit in Russian language. Bhog means God. Because Bhoktaram Jagyatapasam. I am the supreme enjoyer. So it has come into the Russian language that the word for God is Bhog, the supreme enjoyer. So this term, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, of course, this is the title of Prabhupada's book, 10th Canto book, right? But it's very significant. Because in Western terminology, he's just God. Just God. Or somebody may call him Jehovah or this or that, but he's God. G-O-D, Gurudev gave his definition of G-O-D also. And Prabhupada gave the definition of D-O-G. If someone thinks they're G-O-D, then they're dog. D-O-G. Okay? So, but Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when I first saw that word, I'd never seen it before. The word Godhead. That was a curiosity to me. These people are calling him Godhead. Why? Let us hear from our learned senior Vaishnavas in the room. Why is this terminology used? Actually, it's used by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Yes.
Well, in the first canto, second chapter, 11th verse, there's three features described. And so those features are peripheral to Godhead. There's Brahman, the impersonal expansion, and there's Paramatma, the personal expansion. But the head of them all, the Godhead, is Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Okay. Partial. What's the next? What's the next level of explaining this? Maharaj, we have to hear the deeply realized conception.
I was going to say, like Prabhu, that he's the head of all manifestations of God. And also we understand the personal aspects of God because he has a head. He has eyes, nose, mouth.
Okay. Okay. He's personal, that's true. So, but,
Head, tongue.
yeah, yeah. But, yes,
Small question.
question. We're still trying to get the answer first. Wait, let me make a comment first and then you can ask. So, the beginning of the Bhagavatam, 3rd chapter, tells all the incarnations of Godhead. The expansions and incarnations. No other religious conception has this. Only the pure Vedic Vaishnava conception has the understanding that the Bhagavan conception of Godhead is infinite. Infinite personalities. They're all God and all comprising together their Godhead. Like a fountain head is the source of all the water. So, these personalities of Godhead are innumerable. But amongst them, there's only one. That is the topmost. That's why it's called the supreme personality of Godhead. Not only Brahman Paramatma, no. Of all manifestations of God. Supreme. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. So only Krishna is Bhagavan Swayam, and this is the speciality of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is stressed there right from the very beginning. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Yes, there are so many different manifestations and personalities of Godhead. At the end of the 3rd chapter, this verse comes. Ete chamsa kala pungsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Bhagavan Swayam means only one person. There's not two Bhagavan Swayams. Not two. The closest is Baladev, because he's actually Bhagavan Swayam, practically speaking, but still, he's subordinate to Krishna. So, just wanted to make that clear. What was your question?
Actually, this is this term, Supreme Personality of Godhead. It seems like a little bit impersonal, because like there is a God and there is his personality, like his T-shirt, like his something, his
paraphernalia, his clothing.
Yeah, but it seems like there is God and there is personality, like from impersonal some personality comes. This,
from impersonal personality comes?
Yeah, from impersonal God. It's why don't it say divine supreme personality? Or supreme divine personality. Then there is no God and there is no personality emanated from him.
A little bit vague, your question. Main point is, and as we've already explained, is that there must be all aspects of the supreme absolute truth. Okay? Param Tattva. That's in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. Satyam Param Dhimahi. I meditate upon the Satyam Param, the supreme truth. What does the supreme truth mean? Janmadhyasya yataha, from whom everything emanates. So, you cannot say Brahman is that. You cannot say Paramatma is that. Only Bhagavan conception is the source of all emanations. Source of all emanations, including the Jivatmas, include everything, all energy, everything. Just like the sun is the source of all illumination, of all heat and light. So it has to be, the Bhagavan conception has to be there to understand what is the meaning of Adhoksaja, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everyone is lower than him. Adha Kshaja. Everyone and everything is below him. And everything emanates from him. And that's why Krishna can say that, very clearly in Bhagavad Gita, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo. I am the generating source of everything. Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo Matak Sarvam Pravartate. From me, everything emanates. So, yes. So, Rishikesh is the super soul and Adhokshaja is the supreme personality of Godhead, transcendental to the material nature. Just to show favor to the ordinary living entities, out of his causeless mercy, he appears as he is. Just to show mercy to the ordinary living beings. Unfortunately, foolish persons mistake him to be an ordinary person, and so they become eligible to go to hell. So Shukadeva Goswami continued to inform Maharaj Parikshit that Krishna is not an ordinary person, but rather he's the supreme personality of Godhead, imperishable, immeasurable, and without any material qualities, but full of all spiritual qualities. He appears in this material world out of his causeless mercy, and whenever he appears as he is, without change. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord says that he appears by his spiritual potency. He does not appear under the control of the material potency. The material potency is under his control. It's quite the opposite to the living entities. We are under the control of the material potency, but the material potency is under his control. He is not under that. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that the material potency is working under his superintendence. Now, this is one of the most often quoted verses from Srila Prabhupada. You say it. Translation. Daivi Hiesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya. Yes. He says, no, wait. Yes, but I'm thinking, no, there's a different verse. The material energy made of the three modes of material nature is under my superintendence. Right? That's a different verse. I'm trying to remember the Sanskrit. No. Yeah. It's a different verse. So, here, so in the Bhagavad Gita it is stated that the material potency is working under his superintendence. It is also confirmed in the Brahma Samhita that the material potency known as Durga is acting just like a shadow of the substance. Now the conclusion is that if one somehow or other becomes attached to Krishna or attracted to him, either because of his qualities of beauty, opulence, fame, strength, renunciation, or knowledge, or through affection, or friendship, or even through lust, anger, or fear, then one's salvation and freedom from material contamination are assured. In the Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, the Lord states that one who is engaged in preaching Krishna consciousness is very dear to him. You remember that part where Krishna says to Arjuna at the end? Yeah, say it again. Meshu me priyakritta maha. Nor will in the future anyone be as dear to me as he. So a preacher has to face many difficulties in his struggle to preach pure Krishna consciousness. Have we not seen that? Even the highest, most exalted, pure devotees who are preaching pure Krishna consciousness, do they not have to face opposition? Actually, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that's the proof that you're preaching pure Krishna consciousness. Did he face opposition? Yeah, they wanted to kill him. Yeah. So sometimes the preacher has to suffer bodily injuries, and sometimes he has to meet death also. Happened to Haridas Thakur. All this is taken as a great austerity on behalf of Krishna. Krishna therefore has said that such a preacher is very, very dear to him. Now, if Krishna's enemies can expect salvation simply by concentrating their minds on him, then what to speak of persons who are so dear to Krishna? The conclusion should be that the salvation of those who are engaged in preaching Krishna consciousness in the world is guaranteed in all circumstances. But such preachers never care for salvation, because factually one who is engaged in Krishna consciousness, devotional service, has already achieved salvation. Shukadeva Goswami therefore assured King Parikshit that he should always rest assured that one who is attracted by Krishna attains liberation from material bondage, because Krishna is the transcendental master of all mystic power. So, he received. Anyone who is attracted by Krishna attains liberation. Now, when all the gopis assemble, here we come back to the scene. Now we're going to hear how the gopis made their way through the forest in the full moonlight on that evening when Krishna played his flute to call them, leaving everything behind in a disheveled state, arriving there. Now when all the gopis assembled as described before Krishna, as they assembled before Krishna, he began to speak to them, welcoming them, as well as discouraging them by word jugglery. Krishna is the supreme speaker. He is speaker of the Bhagavad Gita. He can speak on the highest elevated subjects of philosophy, politics, economics, everything. And he also spoke before the gopis, who were very dear to him. So dear they were to him. He wanted to enchant them by word jugglery. And thus he began to speak as follows. Here it comes. O ladies of Vrindavan, Krishna said, you are very fortunate, and you are very dear to me. I am very much pleased that you have come here, and I hope everything is well in Vrindavan. Now, please order me. What can I do for you? What is the purpose of your coming here in the dead of night? Kindly take your seats and let me know what I can do for you. The gopis had come to Krishna to enjoy his company, to dance with him, to embrace him and kiss him. And when Krishna began to receive them very officially, showing all kinds of etiquette, they were surprised. He was treating them like ordinary society women, and therefore they began to smile among themselves. And though they very eagerly listened to Krishna talk in that way, they were surprised. And then Krishna began to instruct them. My dear friends, you must know that it is now the dead of night and the forest is very dangerous. At this time, all the ferocious jungle animals, tigers, bears, jackals, and wolves, they're prowling in the forest. Therefore, it is very dangerous for you. You cannot select a secure place now. Everywhere you go, you will find that all these animals are loitering to find their prey. I think, therefore, that you are taking a great risk in coming here in the dead of night. Please turn back immediately without delay. What? When Krishna saw that they continued to smile, he said, I very much appreciate your bodily features. All of you have nice, very thin waists. All of the gopis there were exquisitely beautiful. They are described by the word sumadhyama. This is the standard of beauty of a woman is said to be sumadhyama when the middle portion of the body is slender. So Krishna wanted to impress on them that they were not old enough to take care of themselves. Actually, they required protection. It was not very wise for them to come in the dead of night to Krishna. Krishna also indicated that he was young and that they were young girls. He said, it does not look very well for young girls and boys to remain together in the dead of night. After hearing this advice, the gopis did not seem very happy. Therefore, Krishna began to stress the point in a different way. My dear friends, he said, I can understand that you have left your homes without the permission of your guardians. Therefore, I think your mothers, your fathers, your elder brothers, even your sons, and what to speak of your husbands, they must be very anxious to find you. As long as you are here, they must be searching in different places, and their minds must be very agitated. So don't tarry. Please go back and make them peaceful. Now, when the gopis appeared to be a little bit disturbed and angry from hearing the free advice of Krishna, they diverted their attention to looking at the beauty of the forest. At that time, the whole forest was illuminated by the bright shining of the moon, and the air was blowing very silently over the blooming flowers, and the green leaves of the trees were moving in the breeze. Krishna took the opportunity of their looking at the forest to advise them. I think you have come out to see the beautiful Vrindavan forest on this night, he said, but you must now be satisfied, so return to your homes without delay. I understand that you are all very chaste women. So now that you have seen the beautiful atmosphere of the Vrindavan forest, please return home and engage in the faithful service of your respective husbands. Oh, some of you must have babies by this time, although you are very young. You must have left your small babies at home, and they must be crying. Please immediately go back home and just feed them with your breast milk. I can also understand that you have very great affection for me. And out of that transcendental affection, you have come here, hearing my playing on the flute. So now Krishna's starting to get to the real point. Your feelings of love and affection for me are very appropriate because I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All living creatures are my parts and parcels, and naturally they are affectionate to me. So this affection for me is very welcome, and I congratulate you for this. Now you can go back to your homes. Another thing I must explain to you is that for a chaste woman, service to the husband without duplicity, it is the best religious principle. Best. Not only should a woman be faithful and chaste to her husband, but she should also be affectionate to the friends of her husband. And she should be obedient to the father and the mother of her husband. And she should be affectionate to the younger brothers of her husband. And most importantly, a woman must take care of her children. So in this way, Krishna explained the duty of a woman. He also stressed the point of serving the husband. He said, even if he is not a very good character, your husband, or even if he is not very rich or fortunate, or even if he is old or invalid on account of continued diseases, whatever her husband's condition, a woman should not divorce her husband. If she actually desires to be elevated to the higher planetary systems after leaving this body. Besides that, it is considered abominable in society if a woman is unfaithful and goes searching for another man. Such habits will deter a woman from being elevated to the heavenly planets. Such habits will deter a woman from being elevated to the heavenly planets. And the results of such habits are very degrading. He continues, Krishna. A married woman should not search for a paramour, for this is not sanctioned by the Vedic principles of life. If you think that you are very much attached to me, and you want my association, then I advise you not to personally try to enjoy me. It is better for you to go home, simply talk about me, and think of me. And by this process of constantly remembering me and chanting my names, you will surely be elevated to the spiritual platform. There is no need to stand near me. Please, go home. Now, Prabhupada is going to give us an illumination here on this conversation. He says, the instruction given herein by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to the gopis was not at all sarcastic. Such instructions should be taken very seriously by all honest women. The chastity of women is specifically stressed herein by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, this principle should be followed by any serious woman who wants to be elevated to a higher status of life. Krishna is the center of all affection for all living creatures. And when this affection is developed for Krishna, one surpasses and transcends all Vedic injunctions. Very important point here. This was possible for the gopis because they saw Krishna face to face. This is not possible for any women in the conditioned state. Unfortunately, sometimes a rascal following the philosophy of monism or oneness, very irresponsibly takes advantage of this Ras Leela to imitate the behavior of Krishna with the gopis and entice many innocent women and mislead them in the name of spiritual realization. As a warning, Lord Krishna has herein hinted that what was possible for the gopis is not possible for ordinary women. Although a woman can actually be elevated by advanced Krishna consciousness, she should not be enticed by an impostor who says that he is Krishna. She should concentrate her devotional activities in chanting about Krishna and meditating upon Krishna as is advised herein. One should not follow the men called sahajiyas, the so-called devotees who take everything very lightly. So when Krishna spoke in such a discouraging way to the gopis, they became very sad. For they thought that their desire to enjoy the rasa dance with Krishna would be frustrated. And thus they became full of anxiety. Now, out of great sadness, the gopis began to breathe very heavily. And instead of looking at Krishna face to face, they bowed their heads and they looked at the ground. And they began to draw various types of curved lines on the ground with their toes. They were shedding heavy tears, and their cosmetic decorations were being washed from their faces. The water from their eyes mixed with the kumkum on their breasts, and it fell to the ground. They could not say anything to Krishna, but they simply stood there silently. And by their silence, they expressed that their hearts were grievously wounded. The gopis were not ordinary women. In essence, they were on an equal level with Krishna. In essence, they are his eternal associates. And as is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, they are expansions of the pleasure potency of Krishna. And as his potency, they are non-different from him. So although they were depressed by the words of Krishna, they did not like to use harsh words against him. Yet they wanted to rebuke Krishna for his unkind words, and therefore they began to speak in faltering voices. They did not like to use harsh words against Krishna because he was their dearmost, their heart and soul. The gopis had only Krishna within their hearts, only Krishna within their hearts. And they were completely surrendered and dedicated souls. So naturally, when they heard such unkind words, they tried to reply. But in the attempt, torrents of tears fell from their eyes. Then finally, they managed to speak. They said, "Krishna, you are very cruel. You should not talk like that. We are full-fledged, surrendered souls. Please accept us and don't talk in that cruel way. Of course, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you can do whatever you like, but it is not worthy of your position to treat us in such a cruel way. We have come to you, leaving everything behind, just to take shelter of your lotus feet. We know that you are completely independent and you can do whatever you like. But we request you don't reject us. We are your devotees. You should accept us as Lord Narayan accepts his devotees. there are many devotees of Lord Narayan who worship him for salvation, and he awards them salvation. Similarly, how can you reject us when we have no shelter other than your lotus feet? Oh dear Krishna, they continued, you are the supreme instructor. There is no doubt about it. Your instructions to women to be faithful to their husbands and merciful to their children, and to take care of household affairs, to be obedient to the elder members of the family, all of your instructions are surely just according to the tenets of the Shastras. But we know that one may perfectly observe all these instructions of the Shastras by keeping oneself under the protection of your lotus feet. Our husbands, our friends, our family members and children, they are all dear and pleasing to us only because of your presence. For you are the super soul of all living creatures, and without your presence, one is worthless. When you leave the body, oh, they're making a capital U here. They shouldn't have done that in the editing. When you, meaning like when a person leaves the body immediately dies. And according to the injunction of the Shastras, a dead body must immediately be thrown into a river or burned. Therefore, ultimately, you are the dearmost personality in this world. By placing our faith and love in your personality, we are assured of never being bereft of husband, friends, sons, or daughters. If a woman accepts you as the supreme husband, then she will never be bereft of her husband, as in the bodily concept of life. If we accept you as our ultimate husband, then there is no question of being separated, divorced, or widowed. You are the eternal husband, eternal son, eternal friend, eternal master. And one who enters into a relationship with you is eternally happy. And since you are the teacher of all religious principles, your lotus feet have to be worshipped first. So accordingly, the Shastras state, Acharya Upasana, the worship of your lotus feet is the first principle. And besides that, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, you are the only enjoyer. You are the only proprietor, and you are the only friend. See, even the gopis are quoting Gita. As such, we have come to you, leaving aside all so-called friends, so-called society and love. And now you have become our enjoyer. Let us be everlastingly enjoyed by you. Be our proprietor, for that is your natural claim. And be our supreme friend, for you are naturally so. Let us thus embrace you as the supreme beloved. Then the gopis told lotus-eyed Krishna, please do not discourage our long-cherished desires to have you as our husband. Any intelligent man who cares for his own self-interest reposes all his loving spirit in you. Persons who are simply misled by the external energy, who want to be satisfied by false concepts, they try to enjoy themselves apart from you. The so-called husband, friend, son, daughter, father, mother, they are all simply sources of material misery. Gopis know a lot. Is this true? Is it true now? Has it been true in the past? And is it going to be always true in the future? that the so-called material husband, friend, son, daughter, father, and mother are all simply sources of material misery? They're making this point very strongly. They say no one is made happy in this material world by having a so-called father, mother, husband, son, daughter, and friend. And although the father and mother are expected to protect the children, there are many children who are suffering for want of food and shelter. There are many good physicians, but when a patient dies, no physician can revive him. There are many means of protection, but when one is doomed, none of the protective measures can help. And without your protection, the so-called sources of protection simply become sources of continued distress. We therefore appeal to you, dear Lord of all lords, please do not kill our long-cherished desires to have you as our supreme husband. Dear Krishna, as women, we are certainly satisfied when our hearts are engaged in the activities of family affairs, but our hearts have already been stolen by you. We can no longer engage them in family affairs. And besides that, although you have repeatedly asked us to return home, and that is a very appropriate instruction, but unfortunately, we have been stunned here. Our legs have no power to move a step from your lotus feet. Therefore, if even at your request we return home, what shall we do there? What shall we do? Even if we do return home at your request, we have lost all our ability to act without you. And instead of engaging our hearts in family affairs as women, we have now developed a different type of lust, which is continually blazing in our hearts. Now we request you, dear Krishna, to extinguish that fire with your beautiful smile and the transcendental vibration emanating from your lips. If you do not agree to do us this favor, we shall certainly be burned in the fire of separation. And in that condition, we shall simply think of you and your beautiful features and give up our bodies immediately. In that way, we think it will be possible for us to reside at your lotus feet in the next life. Dear Krishna, if you say that if we go home, our respective husbands will satisfy the lusty flame of our desire, we can only say that that is no longer possible. You have given us a chance to be enjoyed by you in the forest. You have touched our breasts once in the past, which we accepted as a blessing, as do the goddesses of fortune who are enjoyed in the Vaikuntha Lokas by you. So since we have tasted this transcendental enjoyment, we are no longer interested in going to anyone but you for the satisfaction of our lust. Dear Krishna, the lotus feet of the goddess of fortune are always worshipped by the demigods. And although she is always resting on your chest in the Vaikuntha planets, she underwent great austerity and penance to have some shelter at your lotus feet, which are always covered by tulsi leaves. Your lotus feet are the proper shelter of your servitors and of the goddess of fortune. And instead of abiding on your chest, that goddess of fortune comes down and worships your lotus feet. So we have now placed ourselves under the dust of your feet. Please do not reject us, for we are fully surrendered souls. Dear Krishna, you are known as Hari. You destroy all the miseries of all living entities, specifically of those who have left their homes and family attachment and have completely taken to you. We have left our homes with the hope that we shall completely devote and dedicate our lives to your service. We are simply begging to be engaged as your servants. We do not wish to accept you. We do not wish to ask you to accept us as your wives. Simply accept us as your maid servants. Since you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you like to enjoy the Parakiya Rasa, and are famous as a transcendental woman hunter, we have come to satisfy your transcendental desires. We are also after our own satisfaction, for simply by looking at your smiling face, we have become very lusty. We have come before you decorated with all ornaments and dress, but until you embrace us, all our garments and beautiful features remain incomplete. You are the Supreme Person, and if you complete our dressing attempt as the Purusha Bhushana, or the male ornament, then all our desires and our bodily decorations are complete. Dear Krishna, you know what Prabhupada's doing? He's giving the shlokas, and he's mixing the purport of the acharyas into the shlokas one by one by one. It's amazing. It's just amazing how Prabhupada has done this. They go on, Dear Krishna, we have simply been captivated by seeing you with tilak and with earrings, and by seeing your beautiful face covered with scattered hair and bearing your extraordinary smile. Your beautiful face covered with scattered hair and bearing your extraordinary smile. Not only that, but we are also attracted by your arms, which always give assurance to the surrendered souls. And although we are also attracted by your chest, which is always embraced by the goddess of fortune, we do not wish to take her position. We shall simply be satisfied by being your maidservants. And if you accuse us, however, of encouraging prostitution, then we can only ask, where is that woman within these three worlds who is not captivated by your beauty and the rhythmic songs vibrated by your transcendental flute? Krishna, answer that one. Within these three worlds, there is no distinction between men and women in relation to you, because both men and women belong to the marginal potency or prakriti. No one is actually the enjoyer or the male. Everyone is meant to be enjoyed by you. There is no woman within these three worlds who cannot but deviate from her path of chastity once she is attracted to you, because your beauty is so sublime that not only men and women, but also cows, birds, beasts, even trees, fruits and flowers, everyone and everything become enchanted, and what to speak of ourselves. It is, however, definitely decided that as Lord Vishnu is always protecting the demigods from the onslaught of demons, so you have also advented in Vrindavan, just to give the residents protection from all kinds of distress. O dear friend of the distressed, kindly place your hand on our burning breasts, as well as on our heads, because we have surrendered unto you as your eternal maidservants. If you think, however, that your lotus-like palms might be burned to ashes if placed on our burning breasts, let us assure you that your palms will feel pleasure instead of pain, as the lotus flower, although very delicate and soft, enjoys the scorching heat of the sun. Amazing. The gopis have completely defeated everything Krishna said. So, upon hearing the anxious plea of the gopis, guess what happened? The Supreme Personality of Godhead smiled, and being very kind to the gopis, the Lord, although self-sufficient, He began to embrace them and kiss them as they desired. When Krishna, smiling, looked at the faces of the gopis, the beauty of their faces became 100 times enhanced. When he was enjoying them in their midst, he appeared just like the full moon, surrounded by millions of shining stars. And thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, surrounded by hundreds of gopis, and decorated with a flower garland of many colors, began to wander within the Vrindavan forest, sometimes singing to himself, sometimes singing with the gopis. And in this way, the Lord and the gopis reached the cool, sandy bank of the Yamuna, where there were lilies and lotus flowers. In such a transcendental atmosphere, the gopis and Krishna began to enjoy one another. And while they were walking on the bank of the Yamuna, While they were walking on the bank of the Yamuna, Krishna would sometimes put his arms around a gopi's head, breast, or waist. Pinching one another and joking and looking at one another, they enjoyed. So when Krishna touched the bodies of the gopis, their lust to embrace him increased. They all enjoyed these pastimes. Thus the gopis were blessed with all mercy by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for they enjoyed his company without a tinge of mundane sex life. The gopis, however, soon they began to feel very proud, thinking themselves to be the most fortunate women in the universe, due to being favored by the company of Krishna. And Lord Krishna, who is known as Keshava, could immediately understand their pride caused by their great fortune of enjoying him personally. And in order to show them his causeless mercy and to curb their false pride, he immediately disappeared from the scene, exhibiting his opulence of renunciation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always full with 6 kinds of opulences, and this is an instance of the opulence of renunciation. This renunciation confirms Krishna's total non-attachment. He is always self-sufficient and not dependent on anything. This is the platform on which his transcendental pastimes are enacted. And thus ends the Bhakti Vedanta purport of the 29th chapter of Krishna, the Rasa Dance introduction. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari. Srila Prabhupada ki. The next chapter, chapter 30, is titled Krishna's Hiding from the Gopis. And what takes place in that chapter? Let's hear a summary from the memories of the Vaishnavas. What takes place in the chapter Krishna's hiding from the gopis?
They sing songs in separation. Krishna hears those songs.
A little louder, fans.
They sing songs in separation. And Krishna's, of course, observing them. That enjoys.
No, not in this chapter. Not in chapter 30. That's chapter 31, called Songs by the Gopis. So what takes place in this chapter?
He disappears with one particular.
Huh?
He disappears with one particular.
That's true. What else happens?
They go looking for him.
All the gopis. They go searching where? Where do they search? They search all throughout the forest. Then what happens? as they're searching. What are they doing while they're searching, Maharaj? What are they doing while they're searching? What activities are they actually performing while they're searching everywhere for Krishna in the forest?
They're crying, they're talking to the creepers, they're talking to the birds, they're talking, have you seen our Krishna? Have you seen our Krishna? And they go to their Chandrasarovar and they see Krishna that he's turned himself into form. And so they say, oh, Lord Narayan, have you seen our beloved Shri Krishna? And Krishna said, no, I don't know where he is. And so they go on, but then when Radharani comes, he can't control those forearms, so two go back into his body. And then he's happy.
Wrong rasa dance. That's Vasanti Ras. This is what? Saradiya Ras. This chapter, Krishna's hiding from the gopis, describes how the gopis searched everywhere in the forest for Krishna. So, as they're searching, as you just mentioned, yes, they're asking every living entity, have you seen Krishna? Have you seen Krishna then?
So this chapter starts to imitate the activities of Krishna.
Yes.
To remind.
They become completely mad. They become mad women. And in that madness of separation, they begin to remember Krishna's activities, and they mutually begin to play playing out the pastimes of Krishna. And one of the gopis becomes Krishna, one of the gopis becomes the demoness Putana, like this. They're doing all the pastimes of Krishna. So this goes on for some time. And this is still as they're walking and searching for Krishna. But then, at one point, what do they see? Footprints. Describe footprints that they see. No, first of all, they see two footprints, two sets of footprints. One is bigger, one is smaller. Right? And these two footprints are walking together. And then what do they see? They see one of the footprints are like half, just the ball of the foot, like tiptoe, like going on the tiptoes. And the other footprint, where is it? It's not there. Not there. So, at that point, they assume, oh, that particular gopi must have pleased Krishna better than any of us. And therefore, Krishna took her away from our midst. And then they saw that a little bit further, what did they find? They found that gopi weeping and crying. And when they saw her separation, then they knew she's way, way beyond ours. So actually, there's all kinds of explanations about this, Prem Samput and various other books, that actually Krishna wanted to unite all the gopis. That there wouldn't be any envy amongst them and so forth. So in this way, Krishna played this pastime. And of course, it's, as it said, to reduce their pride. And that was necessary, because now they all united together with this gopi, and they tried to comfort her. And now they proceeded forward to the bank of the Yamuna. And there came chapter 31, where the gopis sang their songs. So, we are going to be reading chapter 30 and probably chapter 31 also, because this chapter 30 is not very long. This 29th chapter is the longest one. It's like twice as long as the other chapters. But songs by the gopis is very short. We could actually take Gurudev's Gopi Geet and read. But it's unique how Srila Prabhupada tells the songs of the gopis. And then after that chapter, chapter 31, songs of the gopis. Chapter 32 is? What's happening in chapter 32 after the gopis sing their songs? Krishna returns to the gopis. And then, when Krishna returned to the gopis, and they saw him, and he was showing a very unique kind of mood, and now they became so enamored by his beauty, and now they began to ask him different questions. What kind of lover are you? And that whole conversation takes place. What is that called? There are 5 Geets by the gopis. What is this conversation? When Krishna returns, then the gopis begin to question him. Pranay Geet. Gopi Geet, Pranay Geet. So, after that, then finally comes chapter 33, the last one. And there is the description of the rasa dance. And that description is very, very sweet, very, very beautiful. And it's pretty long, because it's also telling about the gopis, who they were in their previous lives, and all of this, all of those topics. Yeah, this is very long. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And then the questions at the end of the chapter. The questions asked by Maharaj Parikshit. And Shukadeva Goswami's answers, which we've already read about. So, we are in for very wonderful, transcendental, delightful treats in the coming next few classes. And I think probably we'll finish this within 3, maximum 4 of the classes. So today is 13th of April, Thursday. So then is the next Sunday. I'm just trying to see. I don't have. Yeah. Yeah. So then there will be till up to the Sunday, the 22nd, the next Sunday, not this Sunday. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 classes up to the 22nd, next Sunday class. And then, also from then, you may still be here, but that was not completely decided yet, right? But if you are, then there will be 3 more classes from on the Tuesday 25th, Thursday 27th, and Sunday 29th. So we should finish this. We should be able to finish this. I'm pretty certain. So any questions or comments by our very deeply dedicated audience of devotees? Dedicated. Very surrendered and dedicated. Or comments? Questions or comments?
Hearing you, hearing you read that.
A little louder.
Hearing the 29th chapter being read like that, Prabhupada's genius, as you said, incorporated all the commentaries and the charge weeds and the fabric of the Shlokas. This is amazing that this subject matter is so revelatory but revolutionary. Imagine, as I was thinking, what about other religions, like ministers, I mean sincere ones, not political ones, but like people who are searching for truth, for who is God, and you would read this, it is just boring, because it's revolutionary in the sense that they're speaking of God as a person, but the intimacy of love is extreme. It's like there's nothing like that, and yet everyone aspires for that sort of relationship with God. You would think any person who is a sincere seeker, no matter what country, what language, here reading this, must just feel it.
Absolutely. I mean, I can simply speak for myself, and I'm sure everybody can also say for themselves, but being brought up in Christianity for 9 years of my childhood and youth, and hearing continually, there's no mention there what relationship you can have with God other than God the Father. Right? And we're your servant. Doesn't go any further. Although Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has analyzed, and he's actually extracted that even within Christian conception there are some, not only just Shanta Ras, Dasya Ras, and some Sakya, something like that, but conjugal, even there, he gives some reference that there is some mood there amongst certain followers of Christianity. But the fact of the matter is that when you learn that actually you're eternal Atma, you're eternal, you're not this body, okay? So now you have to start to understand that you have a relationship with the Supreme Eternal from whom you've come. But what is that relationship? What is that sambandha? That's the whole thing about the Vedas. The Vedas are the only source from which someone can actually learn what is my relationship with the Supreme in all phases of existence. Huh? So, and then you can learn what to do, how to achieve that relationship with the Supreme, and what is the ultimate culmination of that relationship in development of pure, highest love of God. So that's why Prabhupada wrote in the introduction, or actually in the preface, right? In the preface of his Srimad Bhagavatam, he's writing there about how the Srimad Bhagavatam is a revolutionary movement for human society. Does he not? Yes, I'm going to find that. Okay, here's Srila Prabhupada's preface. We must know the present need of human society. Now he's writing this back in 1964, 63 in the Radha Damodar temple. He's never been to the West yet. But what he writes here is perfectly applicable for all time and circumstance, but especially at that time. So we must know the present need of human society. And what is that need? Well, human society is no longer bounded by geographical limits to particular countries or communities. Human society is broader than in the Middle Ages. And the world tendency is toward one state or one human society, especially now. But unfortunately, they're demons who want to have a one-world government and control everybody. But still, Prabhupada is recognizing, Srila Prabhupada is recognizing that that is the tendency. And he says the ideals of spiritual communism, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, are based more or less on the oneness of the entire human society. Nay, of the entire energy of living beings. The need is felt by great thinkers to make this a successful ideology. Srimad Bhagavatam will fill this need in human society. It begins therefore with the aphorism of Vedanta philosophy, Janmadyasya Yataha, to establish the ideal of a common cause. Human society at the present moment, it is not in the darkness of oblivion. It has made rapid progress in the field of material comforts, education, and economic development throughout the entire world. But there is a pinprick somewhere in the social body at large, and therefore there are large-scale quarrels even over less important issues. So there is a need of a clue to how humanity can become one in peace, friendship, and prosperity with a common cause. Srimad Bhagavatam will fill this need, for it is a cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of the entire human society. Srimad Bhagavatam should be introduced also in the schools and colleges, for it is recommended by the great student devotee Prahlad Maharaj in order to change the demoniac face of society. Komar acharit pragya dharman bhagavataniha durlabham manusham janma tad abhyad adruvam artadam. So the disparity in human society is due to the lack of principles in a godless civilization. There is God, or the Almighty One, from whom everything emanates, by whom everything is maintained, and in whom is merged to rest. There is such God. I'm adding that. So material science has tried to find the ultimate source of creation very insufficiently. But it is a fact that there is one ultimate source of everything that be. This ultimate source is explained rationally and authoritatively in the beautiful Bhagavatam, or the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the transcendental science, not only for knowing the ultimate source of everything, but also for knowing our relation with Him and our duty toward perfection of the human society on the basis of this perfect knowledge. It is powerful reading matter in the Sanskrit language, and it is now rendered into English elaborately, so that simply by a careful reading one will know God perfectly well, so much so that the reader will be sufficiently educated to defend himself from the onslaught of atheists. Over and above this, the reader will be able to convert others to accepting God as a concrete principle. Srimad Bhagavatam begins with the definition of the ultimate source. It is a bona fide commentary on Vedanta Sutra by the same author, Srila Vyasadeva, and gradually it develops into 9 cantos up to the highest state of God realization. The only qualification one needs to study this great book of transcendental knowledge is to proceed step by step, cautiously, and not jump forward haphazardly, as with an ordinary book. It should be gone through chapter by chapter, one after another. And the reading matter is so arranged with its original Sanskrit text, its English transliteration, synonyms, translation, and purports, so that one is sure to become a God-realized soul at the end of finishing the first 9 cantos. And the 10th canto is distinct from the first 9 cantos because it deals directly with the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. One will be unable to capture the effects of the 10th canto without going through the first 9 cantos. The book is complete in 12 cantos, each independent, but it is good for all to read them in small installments, one after another. I must admit my frailties in presenting Srimad Bhagavatam, but still I am hopeful of its good reception by the thinkers and the leaders of society on the strength of the following statement of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, Verse 11. Tadvad visargo janataga viplavo yasmin prati shlokam abhaddavatyaphi namani anantasya yashonkitani yat shrinvanti gayanti grinanti sadhava. Here, telling in this verse, on the other hand, that literature, which is full with descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, form, and pastimes of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a transcendental creation meant to bring about a revolution in the impious life of a misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though irregularly composed, they are heard, they are sung, and they are accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Om Tat Sat. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, dated at Delhi, December 15th, 1962. Gaur Prema. So, we're doing that. We've proceeded through the first 9 cantos for many, many years. It's time. But we're reading the very beautiful presentation of Srila Prabhupada of the Rasa Dance, 5 chapters, which anyone, if they read it honestly, thoroughly honestly, even if they haven't read the 9 cantos, they just get the book on the street, they'll be highly, deeply moved and deeply affected by it. Power of Srimad Bhagavatam, power of 10th canto, and the supreme power of Ras Panchadhyaya. Okay, so thank you very much. Now it's time for Bhagavat Mahaprasadam, and all the Vaishnavas should now proceed to their respective locations where they have been elected to receive Bhagavat Mahaprasadam. So I'm offering my obeisances at the lotus feet of our beloved Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev, our Rupanduva Guru Varga, and all the assembled Vaishnavas. Gaur Premanandi Hari. Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubheva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnava.